Everyone has noticed. The slander the draft class of 2024 is getting is unprecedented. Not just the fans. Scouts and analysts have been talking for some time that teams should trade their 2024 draft assets because they're going to be unable to monetize them. They said that the lack of star power at the top positions was unheard of, and that we were looking at a crop in which the best players were going to be, at best, elite role players.
With the first pick in the 2024
Well, that's something that is said every few years, isn't it? Many of you will remember the same thing being said in 2013, and maybe some of you remember that in the 2000 draft, people were also speculating about this stunning lack of talent. But in both cases, both drafts produced players who ended up being selected for the All-Star game or even MVP in Giannis's case. But how is this draft different? Why is the 2024 draft going to be, no matter what, the worst draft of the last 10 years? Let's talk about this. The truth is that you don't need great depth for a draft class to be considered good. In fact, the 2003 draft is a perfect example. A draft full of superstars in the top positions that, beyond that, didn't offer much else. Still, people consider that 2003 draft to be one of the best in NBA history, for the simple reason that it had great star power. And that's precisely the problem with the class of 2024. That star doesn't seem to be present anywhere.
The Atlanta Hawks select Zachary Rizache.
Zachary Rizache is a player who has been selected first overall, and it is possible that in any draft in the last 10 years, this would not have been the case. In fact, at times during the season, Rizache was more likely to be a pick 5 than a pick 1 during the draft. And mind you, Zachary has nothing in his game that is going to indicate he's going to be a bad basketball player. In fact, his potential as a role player looks very interesting. But the truth is that he doesn't have much to indicate that he's going to be anything more than that either. And as a GM of a franchise, would you invest a season plagued with losses to get an elite role player? A somewhat similar case to that of Alexander Sarr. The French center is a defensive-minded player who has some potential on offense. The truth is that his 7'1" frame and a 7'5" wingspan makes him almost immediately one of the best rim protectors among all prospects. But the Wizards have used a number 2 pick on a player whose offensive potential is in question.
In the 2024 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select Alex Sarr.
In the end, a prospect can always exceed expectations, and Sarr has a style of play very much in keeping with the modern NBA, but the odds of him evolving into something more than a starting center in the league are not as high as people think. The process is repeated throughout the lottery. Many of these prospects are good players, but have flaws that limit their development, like Reed Shepherd, who's probably the best shooter in the draft, but seems undersized by modern standards. And to stand out in the NBA, with that height, you need to be in the Steph Curry's, Donovan Mitchell's, or Trae Young's level, like Stephon Castle, who is known to be capable of excelling on the defensive end, but there are many doubts about his offensive potential.
Castle goes crossover, count it, and a foul.
Like Ron Holland, whose NBA-ready athleticism is well known, but whose instincts leave many doubts about his potential and adaptability in the NBA. Or like Donovan Clingan, who with his 280-pound frame lacks the necessary speed to defend in the pick and roll and will force his team to play drop coverage, something that, in today's league, is certainly dangerous. We could go on like this with all of them. In fact, Memphis was in dire need of a center capable of replacing Steven Adams and allowing Jaren Jackson to play forward. And with the 9th pick, they selected Zach Edey, the Canadian center who at times during the season was rumored to not even make it into the first round of the draft. Another overly slow center who will undoubtedly have trouble finding minutes in the playoffs, unless he has a major athletic turnaround. Yes, I know it's normal for rookies to have flaws. It's rare to find a prospect like Victor Wembanyama, who could be considered to not have a single weakness. But the truth is that it has always given the feeling that there were players with certain probabilities to completely exceed expectations. In every draft, there were some players who had a slim chance of becoming very important players in the NBA. But this season, that doesn't seem to be the case. And the GMs know it. What better way to show it than in trades? During draft night, it's common to see general managers getting deals that are capable of improving the roster. That's how Brad Stevens' Boston Celtics acquired the services of Kristaps Porzingis last year on the night of the 2023 draft. Because the truth is that a draft pick allows a team to start building with profiles that fit their needs. However, this year, it has been very difficult to find trades. The most important was undoubtedly that of Deni Avdija, who went to the Portland Trail Blazers in exchange for draft compensation. But not only the Blazers were trying to convert these draft assets into NBA-worthy players. Teams like the Philadelphia 76ers, Miami Heat, New Orleans Pelicans, or Golden State Warriors were known to be actively looking for trades, and none of them managed to make any significant move. GMs know that a 20th pick in this draft could even be considered a second-round pick in other drafts, and that has caused the market, aside from the New York Knicks, to remain very flat during the early stages of the offseason. But it's not all bad news. The NBA game is so different today from Division 1, where most of the draft prospects come from, that the sample size offered in college doesn't necessarily represent reality. It doesn't always translate. There's always room for players like Tyrese Maxey, who was selected 21st overall in the 2020 draft after a somewhat disappointing season at Kentucky, and quickly adapted to the fast pace of the NBA.
10 seconds left in game 5. Maxey fires! He's got it! Tie game!
But to do so, Maxey had to improve his outside shooting and turned it from a weakness to a strength in a matter of months. And the truth is that there are several players in this draft who are one step away from becoming players with significant potential. But if we analyze them today, with their strengths and weaknesses, they are far from being players ready to contribute immediately in the best basketball league in the world. The statistics say that approximately every draft class generates 7 All-Stars. They also say that they generate between 3 and 4 All-NBA players per draft class. And if we go back in time, we observe that each draft class between the 60s and the 90s had an average of 2 Hall of Famers. Now, are there 7 players with All-Star potential in this draft class? We could throw Risa Shea in there, if he proves to be an improved version of Nico Batum, or even Sarr, if his build allows him to get closer to Wemby than other players with similar athletic characteristics, like Mo Bamba or Bol Bol. Maybe Ron Holland, who has demonstrated a scoring-first mentality, will get it at some point in his career, or even Rob Dillingham, who has proven to be a true bucket getter off the bench at Kentucky.
Dillingham, man, whoa boy.
It could end up becoming an improved version of Lou Williams. But from this point on, as I said, the odds drop drastically. There are real options for this draft to not even include 3 All-Stars, which is a basic expectation for any of the worst drafts in league history. The reality is that only time will tell if this crop of youngsters is capable of silencing all the haters, of silencing all the skeptics who predict a bleak future for the top 60 prospects worldwide. And yes, this video may leave me very bad for the future. I'm aware of that. That's why I invite you to save it and come back in a while to see if, as the experts say, the class of 2024 was one of the worst in NBA history. What is clear is that all these prospects are going to have a chance to prove them wrong as soon as the next summer league starts on July 6th.